We have Wills Week starting from the 16th to the 20th of September, and this is an opportunity for everybody to go and get their will sorted. I am very, very lucky to have Ivan from Talbot Attorneys to come to chat to me, and we're just going to talk about the importance of will, how this fits in with estate planning, which you hear me bang on always and continually. So Avi, thank you for joining me.
Thank you,
I appreciate it. Yeah, great. So Wills Week, what's it all about?
Okay, so Wills Week starts next week, Monday, from the 16th to the 20th. It's an incentive that has been created by the Legal Practice Council, the LPC, to encourage people to have wills drafted in place. So the entire week, the attorneys who registered to engage with Wills Week, they do not charge their clients the drafting of the will. So members of the public can contact us, and they're more than welcome to make an appointment, come see me for a drafting of a free will. It's also to educate people out there about wills, because the statistics is that over 70% of estates reported throughout South Africa are intestate. In other words, without any will. So it's to encourage more and more people to have wills in place.
Yeah, must be a very, very busy week for you guys. So you might be missing touch rugby at lunchtime. What do you need to make sure a will is valid, or the opposite? What makes a will not valid?
Well, in order to draft a will, we just need to consult with the clients. It's most likely need a copy of the ID. So a copy of the address, and just basically details of the next of kin. What makes a will invalid? And there's a number of things. In fact, the list is endless. But usually, if it's signed incorrectly, if it's witnessed incorrectly by someone who's not, someone who's maybe mentioned in the will, or someone who's not of sound mind, or someone that's too young, that can disqualify. They can have a will deemed invalid. If the original of the will is lost and you only have a photocopy, the master will reject that. If it's not signed in the right place, or if it's partially damaged, there's quite a few things that can make a will invalid. Yeah.
And when I meet with the people that I chat with, it's usually one of the first things I ask, or within the first meeting, do you have a will? It's one of the foundational things about passing your values on to the people that you love. What happens if you don't have a will?
Okay. So there's a separate piece of legislation called the Intestate Succession Act, which applies. So when there's no will in place, basically your will then goes to your next of kin, which sounds a lot easier said than done. So it normally follows the bloodline, but with the complications set in is that there's no appointed executive. Family have to agree on an executive. So sometimes that again is a very difficult process. Now, if you have children and you have grandchildren, if one of your children predeceased you, then it goes to the grandchildren. So it just becomes very, very difficult and messy to deal with, especially when you have large families. And now you've got maybe a estate that's worth R500,000 and it's going to 33 people. It was never designed to be that way, but that's how it is. And so you can imagine the complications. Now you need 33 applications for one executive for a small estate. And that's how it is. So intestate succession, sometimes it's not too bad, sometimes it works out, but it's not advisable.
Yeah. And you mentioned an executor. What is an executor and what do they do?
Well, it's a point either way. If there is a will, it's someone who the deceased has nominated. If there's no will, it's normally who the family have nominated. An executor is basically the person who's appointed to carry out the instructions in terms of the will. So they are to make sure that from A to Z, from the reporting of the estate to, right through the entire administration process to the finalization of the estate with the master. And for that process, they get compensated.
Yeah. Well, I remember when Katie, my wife, and we sat down and did our wills with you, and there were certain things that we hadn't even thought about before. And it was actually a nice thing to go through. It felt like we were sort of connecting a little bit, especially after kids. It's a little bit of time together. But what are some of those considerations that you pointed out, talking about guardians and legacies and stuff like that. What sort of considerations do you talk to someone with a will?
Well, it depends on the person's stage in life. So if you've just had children, or your children are minors under the age of 18, we have to look at, part of your will is looking at who the guardians of your children are going to be if you and your wife die at the same time simultaneously. We're going to have to create a trust, because the children won't be able to inherit anything until the age of 18. So a trust has to be created. Their assets will then be left to the trust. And let's say age of 18, or whichever age you select, then the trust terminates. But then you need to choose a guardian. You need to create a trust. And very importantly, you also have to nominate who your trustees of the trust are going to be. If you don't trust anyone, that you don't think there's anyone that's capable or honest enough to actually to administrate a trust, or to be in a decision-making role, then it's also wise then to choose maybe an attorney or an accountant, or some professional person that you know and trust, and know they will act in the best interests of your children.
Yeah. And when you say that, it just brings to my mind the time that clients have had the executor being the bank, or a big corporate, and just the trouble that brings them and their family, because it's just it's not personal, it's not done, it's just not done in a great time. And we've had so much great experience with you doing our clients' wills and wrapping up their estates. And I always say to people, find someone you trust, and so that your loved ones can go in and speak to that person. It adds so much value to your will, just being able to have your loved ones go and chat to someone. And I know with us, we obviously, there's certain policies and certain investments that form part of the will, or certain things that don't form part of the will. And this is how we put together estate planning. I mean, a will is just vital for estate planning. You just can't do anything without it. So, if people want to come and get their wills done, how would they find you guys? Obviously, I'll share a link.
Yes. We've got quite a comprehensive website. They can contact us via that. Offices are also situated at 2 Shackelford Road in Pelham, Pietermaritzburg. So they're more than welcome during that Wills Week to even just to pop in and make an appointment with my receptionist. We also on various social media platforms, so they can contact us that as well. So we're relatively contactable. And they can just feel free to contact me at any time.
Oh, that's lovely. Well, it's going to be a busy week for you, but it's such an important thing, and it's so vital. And the fact that, like you say, over 70% of people don't have a will, that's just ridiculous. When you know the importance of it. And I ask people, often in my meetings, what's the most important thing to you? What do you love? And always people say their family, and usually their kids or their spouse or something like that. And having a will is just, the first place to actually look after them when you're gone.
Absolutely. That's probably the most important document, especially if you have children, that you would ever have. And it doesn't really matter the size of your estate as well. People think, well, I don't have a big estate, therefore I don't need a will. Sometimes these smaller estates are far more problematic to handle than an estate worth 20 million. In fact, some of those estates that are worth 20 million, even if they were to pass a peer estate, will probably still be easier than ones for 1 million rand, and then don't have a will. So it's a difference of years in the administration process.
Yeah. And it's that time. I know that my wife's father's will was being done at one of the banks, and she was paid out some funds 10 years later after he had passed away. I mean, that's just ridiculous, you know. But I mean, I say God's in control of everything, and maybe it was perfect timing for us, because then I could spend it. Whereas if it came sooner, I wouldn't have been able to. Anyway, do you have any, as we end off, any funny will stories? Have you come across anything that just always made you, or you share a good joke with us normally, probably putting you on the spot here. Any funny wills or exciting wills that you've had?
Yeah. I always remember the one problematic estate that I did many, many years ago, where a guy had he had a normal life. He had a wife and 3 kids in the suburb, and he left his estate. And his wording of his will was, "I leave my estate to all my children in equal shares." There was no specification of exactly the names. And then when he passed, there was an affidavit that found its way through whoever to the master's office that he had 3 illegitimate children from another lady from somewhere in the Eastern Cape, and these 3 children now were claiming their 1/3, their 1/6 share of the estate because they were his children. So the wording of that will was actually correct, and maybe that was his intention.
Yeah,
but it certainly came as an absolute shock to the family, not knowing that they had 3 siblings, but now that they are claiming. I just remember, I didn't draft that will. I was doing the estate. I just remember some very, very, very angry people. And I can still remember the expressions on their face. And there was nothing we could do because technically they were his children. The law doesn't discriminate between legitimate and illegitimate children. So if you ever draft that will, yeah, I don't know actually what happened at the end, if they ever took that person on. But we wrapped up the estate and they got a lot less, but little things like that need to be taken in consideration. So
yeah,
it could have been avoided. Yeah.
Well, Ivan, thank you very much for chatting with me. I appreciate it that you made some time. That's great for me and great for the people that are going to view. And have a lovely, lovely weekend. And we'll see you again at Lunchtime Touch. A little plug for Lunchtime Touch.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me. Yeah.